Hey everyone, my name's Sean, and in this video we're going to go over the bonus game that we're releasing for our Kickstarter backers. Basically, I'm going to go over our workflow just to give you a behind-the-scenes look, and then talk about how I designed the puzzles in the game. So let's jump right in. So before we get into the puzzles and how I designed the puzzles, let's just go through the basic workflow. So this program is called Tiled. And how it works is that I have different layers here. There's a logic layer. This controls things like objects that are on the screen, like spheres and cylinders. You can see wall here, so WAL for wall. You can see this is where the player begins, and then there's water. If I turn off this base layer, you can see the text a lot easier. But then obviously you can't see the actual graphics behind it. So there's two layers, this logic layer, which controls if there's going to be doors, if there's buttons, what are these pistons, everything as we scroll through this area. These all have to be tagged correctly with logic, these holes. And then the base layer, these are the graphics. So if you've never used a tile sheet before, it's basically this grid on the bottom right of images. These are the only images that I can use, and I construct the entire scene by putting these in different locations. So if I turn off the logic layer, you can see just the base layer, and this is a corner of a wall, for example. I can stamp this anywhere. So let's pull up this logic layer, and suppose I wanted to add something here. So suppose I wanted to add a rock or a sphere in these locations. Okay, so I've just added a bunch of spheres right here, and all I do is hit save on this file. And in the background, what I have running here, this is code that I wrote that will listen and wait until it notices any changes to the files, and then it rebuilds the game. Now it takes a couple minutes, a minute or two, to rebuild the game, which is annoying to wait through. So I'll fast forward through that and we'll see the output of this process. And here we go, it finished in 54 seconds, and then what it does is it refreshes. This is the mGBA emulator, and it just refreshes it with the new level. So you can see there's now these 4 spheres on the left side of the screen. Now I also have like a cheat mode here, so I can teleport around the world as I see fit. And that just makes it easier to get around and test things out. But that's the basic workflow. So now that you understand that, I want to go through what it takes to design a puzzle and how I designed these puzzles and what I was thinking through as I was designing them. So for the first room of the bonus level, or the bonus game, the focus here was really just a quick review of the rules. The bonus game is designed to be very challenging, so hopefully people have already played through the main game and understand the rules and have had fun with it. So the bonus, this first room, is just kind of a crash course in the rules. So you learn that you can push a cylinder up a stream of sludge. You can push a sphere into a stream. You can push a cylinder into a hole to create a bridge. An important quality of tutorial levels, I think, especially in the beginning, is that you can't fail them. I spent some time making sure that you can't get stuck in any way here. If you accidentally go down here, you can still get out, or if you push the sphere up against the wall, you can still push it up into the sludge. And then eventually you come up through here, and we're in this room. Now I don't want to go over every room because I don't want to spoil the game and the puzzles for people. So I'm just going to skip ahead. I want puzzles to be hard, but I also want them to be fun, right? So this one I started with like a fun concept, and the fun concept was, well, what if when Inky gets hit with sludge, Inky will jump out of the way. But if you could design things in such a way, maybe Inky would keep on jumping out of the way over and over again. So I'm just going to hit left once. And because of the design, Inky keeps jumping out of the way of the sludge and jumping onto the next button, only to get hit by sludge again. So it kind of creates this one way where once you go through, you can't go back. Now, I could have created this exact same puzzle with a much more simple one way. But what fun is that? Like, to me, part of the driving force of this particular level is that it's fun to see this animation, right? And then I built a puzzle around that. And the puzzle that I had come up with is that you have to perform some action on the right side of the screen. And then when you move to the left side of the screen, now since you've prepared it, you can finish the puzzle. But if you don't prepare things accordingly and you just blaze your way through here, then you end up getting stuck. This room, I was thinking about crossing streams of water, or sludge. So if you see, for example, this sludge goes vertically, and then that sludge goes horizontally. And I wanted to play with that idea. So in order to get through this room, you have to have the right streams blocking each other in order to get the green button unpressed, and then you can go to the left. One thing I liked about making Inky is that the rooms reset when you travel between them. So that makes it interesting if you end up arriving on the same screen from a different location. That means you can do different actions. So in the game, I made a couple 2-screen puzzles where you are going from different directions. And I thought for the bonus, to make it extra hard, I should do a 3-screen puzzle. So it's these 3 screens kind of all work together. What I started with was this channel in the middle where you would come up through the middle, get the key, and then scoot off to the left. And then I sketched out, okay, I need, this room becomes really challenging to make because when you're coming from the left, the puzzle is coming up the right side. And then I wanted you to be kind of stuck on the right side here. And then, this room is sort of a normal puzzle because there's not a lot of complexity to the overall navigation. So you just solve it and then come down through here. Now I want you to be able to solve this puzzle again, but now from this direction, and then come down through here, and then solve this center puzzle, and then again up through the middle. So that was, for this series of puzzles, I started with this structure. And then the challenge was to how do I jam interesting, challenging puzzles into these locations. But let's skip this first room, and I want to go to this center room. This one was really probably the hardest one to design. Let's take a look at it. So this room was really challenging to design. It started with this basic idea of if you push this button, obviously you want to go to the left, but if you push this button, you end up dying. So you can see how Inky dies. In the regular game, in the normal game, we didn't really play with that idea. We knew that under certain conditions, Inky could get trapped, so we made a death animation that you just saw. But we didn't really make use of it. There are only a handful of places where you could actually die in the game, and you had to try really hard to do it. So this one I wanted to make it overt, right? Like if you come in here and hit the button, then you end up getting drowned in the sludge. So a lot of this, the puzzle behind this room is sort of figuring out how to deal with this tiny little corridor here where you end up dying. I'm going to go through the solution to this room just to show the idea of misdirection. But if you're not interested in that, just skip ahead. So the idea here is when you push this sphere in, it just travels in a circle, right? So you can keep pushing this over and over again, and all it does is travel in a circle. So a lot of this is just decoration of all these pipes everywhere. I could have made that section a lot smaller, but it's fun to see something kind of swoosh around and hit buttons. Now the real challenge is that if we want to go down on this left side, we need the blue button pressed. But as soon as we press the blue button, this stream gets in the way, so we can't get through. So that's the core puzzle. So hopefully people stumble across that quickly. that they need this button down, but they need to be on the other side somehow. It doesn't really totally make sense. The first thing is to push this cylinder into the hole, and the reason for that, I could have left that part out, but the reason I wanted that in there is to force the player to push the sphere in a circle, right? So they have to push the sphere in the circle in order to get that out, so they understand that this is what it does. The next step is to use this one and to push it in here. And then here's the clever move, which goes against what you would normally think. So at this point, you've just been pushing these spheres in circles, maybe over and over again. But the trick here is to push this one down. That releases the green piston. And now to go left. And that's the moment of misdirection, where that's a hard thing to realize, that you go left there. And what that does is that raises the blue piston, and now that stream that was covering the green piston was covering a stream, but now that stream is going to be in the way. So now the stream that was covered by the blue piston, it doesn't block you from exiting. This was another one where it's not really super hard. It was just something that I thought would be fun for people. But anyways, there it is. So hopefully that gives you an insight into how I think about puzzles, and it was a lot of fun to create this bonus game, and I want to thank everyone for backing our game. We still do have some copies of Inky left, so if anyone wants to grab extra copies, we have a few left, but they probably won't last that long. But anyways, thanks a lot, and we'll see you later.